sharing that photo, by the way.
Oh,
That is just superb.
That photo though is really fun.
It's a good one.
It was.
I miss thrifting so much. I miss it. Like I haven't gone and touched somebody else's clothes in 3 months, and I'm so sad.
Aw, I know the whole world is at a standstill right now, in some ways, right? Well, let me do a little intro,
Perfect.
and we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. I don't know how awake or not awake you might be. I'm pretty not awake, but I am so excited to be joining and to be having a cup of cold coffee with Laura Jean Truman this morning to talk about Pride Theology, and to talk about what Laura Jean does. Laura Jean, use she, her pronouns?
I currently, yes.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
No worries. I just didn't want to get it wrong. And so, yes, my name's Pastor Darcy. I am one of the pastors at Park Avenue Baptist Church, and we are doing a series where we are just trying to broaden our circles and talk to more people. And so I'm excited to be here with Laura Jean Truman in this important time. And so let me stop sharing screen and let everybody see us a little bit bigger. Here we go. Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, good. I was like, oh, sound. So glad to have you. Thanks for being here. We met briefly in the beginning of my seminary journey and the end of your seminary journey. So, I feel like you're a person that I want to get to know and learn more about, and I think others out there might feel the same. So, will you introduce yourself and tell us whatever you want to tell us?
Yeah, so I'm Laura Jean, and yeah, we met when I was at Candler. I did my Master's of Divinity there, came all the way down from New Hampshire to do it, and now I'm trapped in Atlanta, because Atlanta is just the best city. I love it so much. My plan was always to come down and do my 3 years of degree and then just move back up to the Northeast. I was like, I don't need the South. I don't have any interest in the South. Like, I'm a New England girl. And by my second year of seminary, the city just is so good. The city is so good. I love this city. The city is my heart. And so yeah, so I'm here now. I worked as a chaplain for a little while. Worked in a couple of churches for a while, of a couple different denominations. I grew up non-denominational, fundamentalist white evangelical. So that's a whole
Let's
whole
talk about
crazy
that.
land. Oh yeah, it's crazy land over there. God bless them. God bless them with repentance. But it has been a journey coming out of that as a queer woman, and discerning, theologically what it means for me to minister, because I was briefly a chaplain, but then was kind of stymied by my denomination that I was in at the time for pursuing ordination as a chaplain, which is part of what led me to the decision to start working in a bar and work on my writing. And so that's primarily what I do right now, is I write about intersections of queerness and mysticism and justice, and especially what it means to be somebody queer who loves Jesus, and how do we hold those two identities really well. In a nutshell, 33 years
in a nutshell,
life.
Combine it all together. I didn't realize, maybe we talked about this when we met before, but I didn't realize you were from the Northeast. I grew up in Massachusetts.
Oh, no shit, that's great.
Yeah, and I moved here with my family, my mom and dad, and for 1 year, my brother, when I was in high school. So
oh wow,
timeline's a little longer of being in the South, actually. I was
Yeah.
on a call last night with Southerners on New Ground, which is an amazing organizing org. And they were like, "Who's from the South?" And literally had to ask my wife. I was like, "Am I from the South yet? Like, I have been here
Yeah.
longer than I ever lived up north, like
Yeah.
26 years.
Yeah.
But like, am I from here? Who knows?" But I too am in love with the city of Atlanta.
Mm.
Um, and think that, yeah, there's such good work that
Mm.
needs to happen, and things I also like to complain about, which is fine.
That's the most fun. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, so yeah, I would love to hear more about your writing. Well, first, do you work at Manuals?
I do, yes. Well, I mean,
Amazing.
sort of.
Well,
Right
right.
now, I work nowhere. There, Manuel's Tavern has reopened. For those who don't know, Manuel's Tavern is like the heartbeat of progressive politics in Atlanta. It's been around for 63 years, and all the Democratic candidates go through. I have a selfie with Bill Clinton and John Lewis and John Ossoff, and it's all the unions do all their work there. It's very, very cool. So I've worked there as a substitute bartender for 4 years now.
Uh-huh. Hmm. Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Manuals. I was an organizer before I went to seminary, and yeah, it does. It still holds a lot of meaning in the city, and yeah, to sit up in the eagle's nest and like
Yeah,
try to strategize,
yeah,
like the
yeah,
early aughts for me.
yeah.
Um,
Oh man, you were up in the eagle's nest strategizing in the early aughts. That is so cool.
yeah,
I
yeah.
wasn't even in Atlanta then. I wish I'd known you then. We could have been strategizing in the eagle's nest.
Well, I have to say that I was not a very great strategizer. Um, I was more of an event planner, and that's now serving me well in my role as worship pastor. So, but yeah, yeah, it took me a while to figure out my place in movement work.
Mm,
I'm
mm,
not, I mean, that's why I adore the work of song, because they are so strategic, and the campaigns that they come out with are so well thought out, that I can just like be a part of it, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And like they were the ones that came up with the Black Mamas bailout, um and currently they're working on a bunch of different things, um but yeah, in terms of like me being really strategic, that just isn't in my brain.
I mean,
um,
I honestly think that that is a word for a lot of really enthusiastic white people right now of finding your place and your lane in the movement, and don't assume you're starting anything new. Like, find the people who've been doing it for a long time, sit and listen, and don't expect to be the one who's going to be leading anything, maybe ever. And like, get used to it, to kind of assume that. Because that's, I mean, I wish someone had told me that when I first, because really for me, it was moving to Atlanta, because I grew up in rural white New Hampshire. I was homeschooled, like, my God. So moving to Atlanta and thinking, oh, here's a bunch of stuff I can do. Like, what can I do, instead of seeing all of these activists and organizations and saying, where can I plug in the back row to help these people do their work?
mhm.
But
Yeah.
nobody told me that. Bless
Well,
them.
and you were a little like, being in grad school at that point. Let's talk about that journey. I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about. Having also had the experience of moving from the Northeast, and I lived in a small town that's sort of like the last stop, west, but still very east,
Mm,
on the train from Boston. So,
mm,
or on the commuter train from Boston. So, like real white, real. Amy goes back with me, and she's like, "I didn't realize there were this many different types of white people, because it's like Italian, Polish,
mm,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
and it is like cultural." But that being said, moving south in high school was the thing that made me realize, oh, there's work that really needs to be done. Like, and having had the experience of in high school, a teacher really tried to indoctrinate me into like Southern white ways of thinking about race and
Ooh,
the Civil War. And so I had to like learn. Like
yeah.
I had to figure it out.
Mm. Ooh,
Which
what
is
a vulnerable age too. That is, that must have been a really hard age to be wrestling with those things.
um maybe.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think about it with my son now where he's 5 and we're teaching him, exactly what's going on in the world. And I follow a lot the work of Jennifer Harvey,
Mm.
who has an amazing book that I've been recommending to people who are parents, people who are not parents, people who were raised by parents, but it's called Raising White Kids,
Yeah.
white people that have been raised by white parents. I recommended it to my mom just as a way of thinking about sort of what happened,
Right.
why so much emotionalism when it comes to or stunted emotionalism when it comes
Yeah.
to race. But anyway, tell me in your experience, um, so you moved from small rural place.
Mhm.
Maybe just tell me about what that was like moving here. Were
Yeah.
you already at that point like queer identified? And um,
Yeah.
tell me about you.
I had my experience coming out was pretty rocky, which I think is often the case. So I identify as queer, which encompasses I am attracted to and date men and women and non-binary, um, every way of being human I'm attracted to and date. And I also identify as queer because for me the question of gender feels very active. I joke that my preferred pronouns are panicking every time someone asks me my preferred pronouns. I'm always like, they're all wrong. I hate them all. I don't know. I don't have a thing. And I don't know what to do with that yet. So it's kind of an open question. So I like queer. And I've used bisexual as well because it's easier for people. I think it's faster. And so the process for me, it was my sophomore year in college that I started dating a woman. Well, dating. I was very fundamentalist evangelical, and so it was very sinful, very wrong. I was sure I was going to hell. Like I remember riding the bus into campus one day and thinking, if this bus gets in a crash, I'm going to go to hell. And just like holding that was just I just remember that being an incredibly difficult time of my life because I fell in love with this woman and I had not previously anticipated that. I mean, looking back, you can be like, "Oh yeah, look at all these girls you were in love with in high school." Like, but
Every single
I
one of my best
hadn't.
friends checked.
Right? Oh man, those were love letters. Oh my god. So like, I didn't have a context. I didn't even know. I remember we got a World magazine was what we got, which was like the evangelical news little newspaper that was more conservative than that liberal Christianity today. So we didn't get the liberal Christianity. We got World magazine, and there was a picture in one of the articles of two men holding hands in a church. I must have been 12 or 13, and I remember thinking, "What in the world are they doing?" Like I have no idea what they were doing. So I made it until, puberty, not even knowing gay was a thing. Like I had
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
it was just very, very, very sheltered. So anyway, so yeah, so falling in love with a girl in college was so traumatic and I mean, I count that moment also as the moment that I started to deconstruct evangelical theology
Mhm.
because after a while like it clearly wasn't working. Um and I think without that experience, like I am so grateful for queerness. I think actually Rachel Ward has a wonderful thread on Twitter from a couple years ago that I go back to a lot, where Rachel talks about being queer as such a gift to starting to have eyes to see the oppression and needed liberation of other people groups. Because I don't know, I'm not saying that if I wasn't queer, I'd be a Karen, but like that was the thing that said something isn't right here in this theology, something isn't right here in these churches. And so that started the dismantling process. But when I moved down to Atlanta, I was still only out to a couple people. And I had kind of fallen in love with a couple girls and then a couple boys since then. And I was like, maybe I don't need to be out. Maybe there's what's to out. I don't, this is, so I started Candler and I was still on the moderate end of the spectrum and still wrestling with a lot of that personally. Long answer to a short
No,
question.
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I love thinking about the connection with queer liberation and Black liberation, and that's
Mm,
um, one of the things uh, that my spouse and I really connected on
mm,
um, when we first began knowing each other, was that um, marriage equality was like really ramping up. This was
mm,
before 2015, and both of us were like not interested at all in marriage equality. And I should say, we benefit from marriage equality now. Um, uh, the reason being that we both kind of just innately knew that the struggle for liberation had to go deeper than that, and it had to be
mm,
more inclusive than that. And
mm,
I think we're finally seeing maybe a movement that is more encompassing and broader. And definitely I'm grateful to be able to be married, but the idea that that is more important than
mm.
someone's life is to me ridiculous.
Yeah.
um, I think that's a great pivot point to talk about the connection in and we've had some conversations. This isn't like a test of any kind of like
I think I texted you, but I'm an Enneagram 1, so literally everything feels like a test. Like
yeah, no,
the world is
no.
just a series of are you a good person tests, and you're always just like passing or failing. That's being an Enneagram 1.
Okay, well,
But,
just
yeah,
know that this isn't,
yeah.
but I do want to talk about
Mm,
the intersection
mm,
of Black theology and queer theology.
yeah.
And I love what you said previously is like, you know, not starting something as a white person and
Mm,
not trying to colonize a movement that's
mm,
been there. And I think that that's such wisdom when it comes to so much of this like peeling back of layers that I think is part of what I do as a pastor and an artist, is to say this existed long ago.
sure.
We're just rediscovering it, or not even rediscovering it. We're tapping into a source that has always been there and been present. And so, yeah, I hadn't thought about it in terms of like my own queerness or otherness
Mm,
or gender nonconforming self as being this maybe cornerstone
mm.
um, for broadening a perspective. Do you want to talk a little bit more about your own? Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that thread from Rachel Ward, who we adore and love. Hey, Rachel.
Hi,
um,
Rachel.
I don't know, just out there in the
I'll,
ether.
I'll 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 tag her
What
in
do you
it on
think they're
Twitter. I'll be
doing?
like, Rachel, shout out. Like, there you are.
I'm like, they're probably sleeping. I
Yeah,
kind of wish I were. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, talk a little bit more about it as you understand
Mm,
it, if you want, or you can just talk
yeah,
about your own kind of uh, theology of queerness or
yeah.
liberation in whatever way.
I mean, I think I think if we're not able for those of us who have intersecting privileges and oppressions, you know, those of us who are white and queer, or white and woman, or white and non-binary, using, I mean, we've been given a tremendous gift, I think. Like that is a gift to be able to see the places that culture and the world does not see you, or tramples over you, or is that the way that that oppression bumps into you should be able to be a wonderful welcoming point for you to then say, let me hear this other person speak from their oppression that is more deeply rooted or more systemic than even mine is. And in a way, like, I think this journey is the hardest always for cis white straight men. Not that I'm going to throw them a pity party, bless, but I don't know what in their experiences can then allow them to build a bridge into the experience of the other in the same way. And I think their work is a lot harder, and they don't necessarily have to do any of it because they can just coast through life and not see any of that. I think for those of us who have identities like queer or woman or non-binary, um, I mean, I think of the word gift a lot because I do feel like it is a gift to be able to use that to then see and hear, like, all the times that I can, you know, those stats about women in the room and men in the room, and how men think when women and men talk the same amount of time, men think that women are talking 80% of the time, and all of these stats, and as women we hear those and we feel them in our body, and I can say, oh my gosh, yes, and then I say it to a man, and a man has 1,000 reasons why. Oh, well, that's not really, you know, that's not, or that's not me, or oh, what if I, oh, I'm so sorry, like I never, what can I do to me? All of that baggage can happen. And if I, as a woman, can't experience that and then say, can I hear my Black siblings when they tell me that that is happening to them in white spaces where they're speaking and we're not hearing? Like, I mean, that's, I don't honestly know how white straight cis men become woke, because it seems like it's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah. I think often about how we can hear stories and there's so many, yeah, there's so many different ways, I guess. One of the ways that I'm really thinking about a lot lately in terms of like empathy building is to look at art and to look at
Mhm.
photos um and but don't just like look, like really look, you know, and think deeply. And I think that's my own bent, you know, is toward the visual arts. But um yeah, I went to this really wonderful, I'm a part of Arts Religion Culture ARC, which is a guild of artists and theopoeticians, and theopoetics I never learned about at Candler.
Mm.
It took me after Candler to really start thinking about it, but it is an incredible movement that really decenters the written and sort of sermonic, philosophical lens of theology to say embodied practice is actually where we um, is one of the oldest
Right.
practices, right? But it is where it is just as important and meaningful as written sort of. The barriers of that are really high for so many. But I think that same thing is sort of what we're bumping up against, or maybe people are bumping up against, white people who are trying to connect and trying to figure out their own role and place in the movement for justice and the movement for Black lives. And wanting to be embodied in the practice, and that really not involving, asking your one Black friend. And so, yeah, yeah, there's so much for me that I learn experientially in an embodied way, which, yeah, is why I always focus on that stuff, writing. And that's also
Yeah.
why I'm like, writers, you guys are amazing. Do you want to tell me about like what you're working on right now in terms of writing, or what's your favorite thing that you've written recently?
My favorite thing that I've written
I don't know. Is that how
recently.
writing works?
It's I don't love a lot of things that I've written. I feel like that is mostly how writing works. I think there's some things that I've written that feel really important. That if I could say, what is one thing that you want everyone to read that you've written?
Okay, that's a better question. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
some
come back
years
to writing.
ago, I wrote a piece called "When Queer Christians Doubt," um, because I've had so many conversations with queer Christians who are raised in fundamentalism and are convinced theologically and convinced spiritually that this is fine and this is okay. But I mean, it is psychologically pernicious, the damage that fundamentalism does to queer souls. It is, and it lasts, And so you sit with queer folks and people wrestling with, what if I am wrong? Like, what if I am wrong? Like, what if at the end of the day this is actually wrong? What if it's actually sinful? And it was a really hard piece to write because pieces like that, can be weaponized by conservatives. Like, oh, look, the queer Christians are doubting. That's the Holy Spirit. And I had a lot of fear as I was writing it of like how a piece like this would be used. But then, when you are doing the work, remembering it, maybe it doesn't matter how this will be used by the bad guys. Like this is something that people need, and I think of everything I've written, that piece about like, even the point was kind of, I don't think this is wrong, and I think we can securely rest in that. But even if you're wrong, you are still beloved and you are never separated from the love of God. And we are wrong about so much. Like, we are wrong about 90% of our theology and our lifestyle. Like, we are, I mean, especially like in a capitalist society, like there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. So everything we do is unethical. The computer that I'm using right now is made with conflict minerals, and there's no computers that aren't made with conflict minerals. And the kind of the sin that drenches our life every day, always, that we work to dismantle, but we can never fully be free of. And so we're always repenting and dismantling and realizing 80% of the sins that we're doing every day, we don't even see. We have no idea because culture has blinded us, or this moment in time has blinded us. Like thinking about even things in the Hebrew Bible where people are like, oh yeah, this is super holy. And now we're like, wow, that does not feel super holy like that. But I don't think those people were separated from God because they lived in a culture that some of the things they thought were holy were diminishing to the image of God in women, or diminishing to the image of God in other cultures. And so if we really hold that humbly, that so much of the sin we do, we don't even know about, and some of the sin we know about and we can't detangle ourselves from, then we have nothing to be afraid of. Like, as queer Christians, okay, all right, so worst case scenario, you're wrong. It's wrong to be gay. You are beloved. You are beloved. Like, you will always be beloved. And that just feels really important to me, like really important. And so I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's interesting, the perspective of so you're saying like kind of giving this article is so important. This message clearly needs to be heard by so many people. And I think we see that at Park Avenue. We, the no ifs, ands, or buts, you are loved by God for sure.
Hey, good morning.
The question, the question that came to
Hang
mind.
on 1 second.
Oh, that's cool.
You're all right. Don't worry about it.
Sorry, we have our toilet is falling into the floor, and our door is falling off the hinges. So the repairman is here to fix some of those situations.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, sorry, carry on. Thank you.
No. I mean, I was just thinking about, what struck me and what you said was, what you said at the beginning is, that people might use this against you, or I don't, I'm in such a liberal, progressive, radical context that I don't think about things like that. And so I want to dig into it a little bit in terms of, so you as a writer still, do you consider yourself like a bridge builder? Do you have people that sort of just troll you to look for those things? And I guess I just asked that not to like, I don't know. I asked that out of curiosity. I do think that that's like a particular viewpoint, and one that I'm just like not familiar with,
Yeah. Well, it's I think a lot of that comes from, the church that I've been primarily part of for the last 8 years is non-affirming. And so a lot of the relationships that I've built with Christians in Atlanta have been at that church. And it has been something very sacred watching changes happen at that church, and watching a lot of people that when I met them 8 years ago and they were not affirming are now affirming. And that is a work that makes my soul very happy. And I think it's part of the reason that work is so dear to my heart, is because I feel like it wasn't very long ago that I was not affirming of myself. And how deeply internalized homophobia has been in me. And I think in being open about that and working to dismantle that in yourself, you also kind of, you start to see that in queer people who are raised in fundamentalism and hear those stories. And it's really, I don't know, it is pernicious and sad, and I think I am very deeply aware that there, but for the grace of God, go I. And I know everyone does not come into these conversations with a goodwill. Tragically, I kind of want to believe they do. I'm kind of like, if we all just knew somebody that was queer, if we all just read the right article about dismantling white supremacy, like if we could all hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And that's not true. There are people who I think repentance will be a harder work for them. But I, in my life, have been deeply grateful for the grace that has been given to me on this road, because I think my road has been slower than I wish it was. And people have come alongside me and walked with me in that. And especially around LGBTQ things, I think I have a heart for that walking journey that I think most queer people should not have out of self-protection. I get in this on Twitter often. This is probably my biggest Twitter that I end up in with people about should queer people attend non-affirming churches. And I think almost always the answer is no. I think we deserve to be in places that are safe and whole and honor us and celebrate us. And the work is much more systemic than people think. Like people are like, oh my God, I had coffee with my pastor. He said, I love you. So, hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, I think that's
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even read that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, no
Yeah,
problem.
I think
You're
that
recording. Sorry, did you hear any of that?
hey, yeah, sorry, I couldn't figure out how to.
Oh no, I had a gentleman is trying to dismantle my door and it was getting very loud, so I had to. Hi, do you mind coming back in just a little bit? Thank you so much. Appreciate you. So anyways, I think the point being that it is not everybody's work, and I think most queer people should prioritize protecting ourselves in those instances. But
And
it
so
is
you make that
something, yeah.
choice.
Yeah, I think it feels less, I mean, Sarah Bessey says, our vocation is where our joy and our anger meet. And I love that. Um, and I don't know, those, I don't know. And it's hard. I mean, I will say I go back and forth often, and sometimes it's just more anger. And then I know I need to take a little break and step away and be like, all you're doing is yelling, and that is not like the call. So let's just take a break and let's do some self-care, and let's be back in some spaces that are celebratory towards queerness and see the image of God in queer people. But I don't know. It just I feel very compelled often by there, but the grace of God go I. Like I feel very compelled by I am here because of people who have invested in me, even when maybe I did not look like a worthwhile investment. And to want to be present to other people who are on that journey, even when I do it imperfectly or don't show up in the proper way, that feels vocational to me at this point in my life. Yeah.
So I don't want to end up focusing too much on like, your context unless you
Yeah.
want to. What occurs to me is the question. So the whatever context, we don't have to name any names,
Yeah.
but the non-affirming context, is it anti-racist? And I'm not, it's like that's
Yeah.
kind of a setup. Like
Yeah.
I guess my assumption is, that that a non-affirming space where you might be would be also maybe like a white space or a space that and again, that's not a
Yeah.
judgment, but I do want to look at like
Yeah, I mean, it
the
is,
intersection of
yeah, of course.
of liberations.
Yeah, it is a primarily white congregation. Its partner church in the city is a more diverse congregation, and the pastor is Black. So the two churches are partners. It is a church that I have seen working very hard to dismantle its struggles with white supremacy in sermons and in their social media presence. And in there they had a prayer and fasting vigil on Monday against white supremacy online, where they asked everyone in the church to participate in that. It is not a perfect church in terms of how it works to be anti-racist, and I think it's hard because it is a church that is significantly white. I think there are some people of color on the elder board, but it is a very white congregation. But I do see the leaders wrestling with that, and I see that in how they structure the prayers, and I see it in how it is brought up consistently in sermons. And they had a series of forums about racism and dismantling racism a couple years ago that were very good. I think the struggle with the church is to stay steady on the work, instead of kind of coming in strong and being like, we're doing all this stuff right now, we're going to dismantle, we got it. Okay, we're ready. And then it'll like fade, and then the church will be like, oh my God, we're going to do it again, lots of prayers and lots of sermons, and then it fades. So I think finding connections with local organizations and staying committed to them is perhaps a growing edge for this community. But I do I see a heart in the leadership to learn and do better and to be constantly moving towards that. And it's not enough, but it is.
Right.
It
I
is
mean,
something.
no
Yeah.
church is doing enough.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's cool. I mean, that totally goes, yeah, the work of liberation to
Mm,
me is interconnected.
mm,
And certainly those with intersectional oppression feel that really acutely, I would say.
Well, and
And
I think one of the reasons that this church has been a place that has had a lot of meaning for me is, when I started attending, when I first landed in Atlanta, it was still part of a denomination that did not ordain women. And everybody said that that would never change. And since I've been there, the church moved to a denomination that would ordain women, but they said, don't worry, we'll never have a female pastor. And now there is currently a female pastor at that church. And so I see in that church a long obedience in the same direction. Like I see a working and a movement and a constant coming back to the questions and wrestling. Um, and for me, that is, and I think a lot of people who are staying in non-affirming spaces perhaps don't have that. And there needs to be like a release of, this is not a place that we are going. Maybe the work of the Spirit in this community is to dismantle it, and the Lord will grow up something new in its place. But I have seen movement towards justice in this community, and that is a movement that I think I'm honored to be in the middle of and to be a part of.
that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, examples of hope and where that real,
Yeah.
arc is bending toward justice, as it were. That's really powerful. That's really powerful. Well, we only have a couple more minutes. What haven't we talked about that you were like, we're going to talk about this? I don't know. You were thinking about something in your
Oh
mind.
my gosh, I don't think so. I don't. Yeah, no. Give me your best question. I'm ready for it.
Oh, the best question. Well, I'm really into poetry right now. So I'm always
Mm.
trying to like gather um a friend at Park Ave has this like lovely um document that he's now letting me put poems onto. So I love to ask people the question of like, what is your poem? Like, what is your favorite poem right now? Or what is something that's like moving you artistically right now?
Well, I'm terrible at poetry. Um,
Well,
I've
to be
always,
terrible at
I've,
writing
oh, well,
poetry, you could be.
I'm terrible at reading poetry. I'm terrible at reading poetry, but for the last couple of years, I have had, well, I guess about 7 years ago, I ripped out of a program Mary Oliver's poem, Wild Geese, and I just stuck it with tape on my wall over my bed and just had it all beat up like from some event I went to at Candler, and I just had it stuck there. And since then, I actually had a friend do it in calligraphy for me, and now it hangs next to my bed in calligraphy because I think as a one who is very tied up in how can I hate myself until I'm better today? Like that is kind of my every morning I wake up with the question, how can I hate myself until I'm better today? Like how can I do that? And kind of taking that apart in my brain means seeing Mary Oliver say every morning, you do not have to be good. And then I see it and I'm like, well, that's a lie. We clearly haven't you seen the world, the word, and then letting my brain like do that every day, like tear that apart has been very good work for me. I never get tired of that poem. I never get tired of that poem.
I
My soul
love
needs it.
that. Do you want to read it right now? I pulled it up. I can
Yeah,
share
actually,
it.
wait, I have if you hang on.
Yes.
I
I
have
want to hear calligraphy.
can you see my original? This is the original ripped out of Oh, it's from CPE, scheduled for CPE day. A little
Aw,
beat up. But yes, I would love to read it.
yes.
Oh, and
Okay.
also
Well,
before I read it, one of the things that I love most about Mary Oliver is, she was queer, but her work was not about queerness. Like she felt called to this vocation, and her queerness was part of the vocation, but it was not the focus of her vocation. And I would love to see a world where queer Christians, especially, feel like our queerness does not have to be our vocation, but is rather a part of who we are that makes what we do in the world so important and sacred. So Mary Oliver for the win.
yay. I love it. Well, let this be our sort of benediction
Mm.
and word of prayer here
Yeah.
at the end. And I'll say more words after, but yeah, let's hear it. I love
Okay.
it.
Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. I want to say amen after it.
Yeah, amen. I do think that's beautiful. And I think it's really timely, just that metaphor of wild geese and how she uses it in a lot of her poetry is like Holy Spirit. And so as we sit in Pentecost, and we're seeking to see the Spirit, see the Spirit in the work of racial justice, see the Spirit and the work of the prophets in the work that protesters are doing right now, and creating spaces for healing. And so it sounds like that's just a big part of what you do too. So yeah, thank you so much, Laura Jean,
So much.
for talking and just being so open, and your perspective is super valuable, and yay, we get to just continue in this work.
Thank you. This is such a delight to be here. And thank you for everything you and your congregation do in this city. It is something tremendously good. We are very grateful for y'all and your work.
Well, you too. And yeah, let's not go, another 2 years without texting.
Absolutely. I would say let's get coffee sometime, but
Hey, we have coffee
getting
right
coffee
now.
right now.
Yeah.
My Liz Warren, I like my coffee like I like my American Union strong mug.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. Well, thank you, and have
Yeah.
a wonderful day. And yeah, can't wait to see the next thing you write. So, do you want to tell folks for the viewings later, how do they follow you and find you on the world of medias?
Yeah, so I'm pretty easy to find. I'm my handle is my name almost everywhere. Laura Jean Truman. My website is laurajeantruman.com, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter at laurajeantruman.com as well. Well, at Laura Jean Truman.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
day. And I
Thank
hope
you.
everything in your home gets fixed.
That's the dream.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.